Hey folks, John Oliver here. Tonight, we're diving into the wild world of economics. Just kidding, nobody wants that. But we are going to tackle one little piece of it, the Phillips curve. Think of it like a seesaw. On one side, you've got inflation, prices going up. On the other, unemployment, people out of jobs. The Phillips curve basically says when one goes up, the other goes down. Why? Well, when unemployment is low, people have more money to spend. That increases demand and businesses can raise prices. Conversely, high unemployment usually means less spending, less demand, and lower inflation. It's like that friend who's always winning at your expense. Except in this case, nobody really wins. So, where did this idea come from? Well, it all started with a New Zealand economist named A.W. Phillips. Back in the 1950s, Phillips noticed a curious relationship between unemployment and wage inflation in the UK. He plotted data from nearly a century and found that when unemployment was low, wages tended to rise faster. This was a groundbreaking discovery at the time. Economists later expanded on Phillips's work, applying it to general price inflation, not just wages. The Phillips curve became a fundamental concept in macroeconomics. But like any theory, it has its ups and downs. In the 1970s, the world faced stagflation, high inflation and high unemployment simultaneously. This seemed to contradict the Phillips curve, leading to debates and revisions. Today, the Phillips curve is still taught, but with a more nuanced understanding. It's seen as a useful tool, but not a strict rule. Policymakers use it to help balance economic goals, but they know it's not the whole story. They consider other factors like global events, technology, and consumer behavior. The economy is complex and ever-changing, and so are the tools we use to understand it. So next time you hear about the Phillips curve, remember it's just one piece of the puzzle. And like any good puzzle, it takes time and effort to see the whole picture. Thanks for joining me on this economic adventure. Until next time, keep questioning and stay curious.
Let's rewind to 1970. Platform shoes were cool, disco was life, and the Phillips curve seemed to be holding true. Inflation was a problem, but hey, unemployment was relatively low. Seemed like a fair trade, right? Not so fast.
Fast forward to the year 2000. We survived the Y2K scare, the dot-com bubble was about to burst, and the Phillips curve started acting a little funky. Inflation remained relatively low, even as unemployment fell. Were we in some kind of economic nirvana, or was the Phillips curve about to pull a disappearing act?
Fast forward again to 2014. Selfie sticks were becoming a thing. Why? And the economy was still recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. The Phillips curve was still looking a bit shaky. Low inflation persisted despite falling unemployment. Had the relationship changed, or were there other forces at play? Stay tuned.
And here we are in 2024. The world has changed in ways we couldn't have imagined just a few years ago. Cities have grown taller, technology has advanced, and our daily lives are more interconnected than ever before. The world's a wild ride, and the economy is no exception. The financial markets are buzzing with activity, and the stock exchange is more dynamic than ever. Investors are constantly on their toes, trying to predict the next big trend. So, what's the deal with the Phillips curve now? Well, it's complicated. Economists are still debating its relevance in today's economy. The relationship between inflation and unemployment isn't as straightforward as it once seemed. Inflation has been a bit of a roller coaster, with prices rising and falling unpredictably. This volatility has made it challenging for policymakers to maintain stability. The stock market reflects this uncertainty, with sharp ups and downs that keep everyone on edge, and the relationship with unemployment is still murky. Despite low unemployment rates, wage growth has been sluggish, and many people are still struggling to make ends meet. The traditional indicators don't tell the whole story anymore. The Phillips curve might need a software update or something. Economists are turning to new tools and technologies to better understand the complexities of the modern economy. Advanced data analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are being used to create more accurate models and predictions. The future of economic forecasting is evolving, and it's an exciting time to be in the field.
Now, here's the thing about the Phillips curve. It's not exactly universally beloved. Some economists think it's a useful tool for understanding the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Others think it's about as reliable as a weather forecast in a hurricane.
So what's the verdict? Is the Phillips curve still a useful tool for economists? Or has it become outdated in today's complex economic landscape? Is the Phillips curve the economic equivalent of a magic 8-ball, offering vague and often inaccurate predictions? Or does it still hold some value in understanding the intricate dance between inflation and unemployment? Well, it's certainly more complicated than it used to be. The relationship between inflation and unemployment is influenced by a bunch of factors, and it's not always predictable. The Phillips curve might not be a perfect crystal ball, but it still gives us some insights into the economy. And hey, in this crazy world, sometimes that's all we can ask for. Let's take a step back and understand what the Phillips curve actually is. Named after economist A.W. Phillips, this concept emerged in the late 1950s. Phillips observed an inverse relationship between the rate of unemployment and the rate of inflation in the United Kingdom. Essentially, when unemployment was low, inflation was high, and vice versa. This relationship seemed to hold true for a number of years and became a cornerstone of macroeconomic policy. However, as time went on, the simplicity of the Phillips curve was called into question. The 1970s brought about stagflation, a period of high inflation and high unemployment, which the Phillips curve couldn't explain. This led economists to reconsider its validity and look for additional factors that might influence the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Today, the Phillips curve is seen as more of a guideline than a rule. Economists recognize that the relationship between inflation and unemployment is affected by a multitude of variables, including expectations of future inflation, supply shocks, and changes in the labor market. For instance, globalization and technological advancements have significantly altered the dynamics of the labor market, making the relationship less predictable. Despite its limitations, the Phillips curve still provides valuable insights. It serves as a starting point for understanding how inflation and unemployment interact, even if the relationship is not as straightforward as once thought. Policymakers and economists use it as one of many tools to gauge economic conditions and make informed decisions. In conclusion, while the Phillips curve may not be the definitive answer to all our economic questions, it remains a useful framework for analyzing the complex interplay between inflation and unemployment. In a world where economic conditions are constantly changing, having even a partially reliable tool can be incredibly valuable. So, is the Phillips curve still relevant or total BS? The answer lies somewhere in between. It's not a magic 8-ball, but it's not entirely useless either. It's a piece of the puzzle in the ever-evolving field of economics.